Faith the Unholy Trinity is an Atari-style horror game following the harrowing journey of John Ward, an ex-priest trying to fix the mistakes of his past and do right by God and himself. This graphically simple horror game uses the quality of its graphics and sound design to intentionally unsettle the player with designs that are limited to fit the aesthetic. In particular, the text-to-speech and abrupt visual and sound cues are made to disquiet the player and make them fear what may or may not be there. This video will have story and gameplay spoilers for Faith. I highly recommend experiencing the game blindly, so if you have an interest in that, I suggest leaving the video now. Erdorf, the game's creator, uses the illusion of danger to consistently keep the player on edge for scares that won't come, which only works because the game sets the expectation that you're never safe immediately. In Chapter 1, after you leave your car and head into the woods, you're able to encounter Michael Davies, which greets you with distorted speech you may not even grasp as language the first few times that you hear it. The surprise of seeing a stark white, spider-esque creature after less than a minute of gameplay is jarring, and it's not hard to fend off with a flick of the cross, but first impressions are important, and Faith has just told you that you're not safe. Michael's very persistent, and will randomly assault the player until repelled 10 times. In addition to that, he's guaranteed to attack John in the shed after he grabs the key, which is at least telegraphed. Although the woods aren't truly random, navigating them as a new player can be confusing, and warding off Michael keeps you on edge. Though he's easy to get rid of, there's always the chance you get unlucky at the edge of the screen and he spawns on you, not leaving enough time to repel him. The death screen for when he gets you is unexpected if you're unfamiliar with Faith, as it's your introduction to rotoscoped scenes as you get a nice look at how this aberration moves before hearing your first mortis. Now that Erdorf has conditioned the player, what does he do with this? Chapter 1 is short, and only has the Martin house left, which is eerily still. After the random assaults, it feels imperative to move around the house cautiously, but no danger is present until you trigger Amy in the basement. Then, at least, with John's remark that she is here, you know something should happen, and it does. Strange symbols follow John, which you can exercise to ward off Amy. At the conclusion of Chapter 1, you get the gun with one bullet. The walk back is tense with the reversed sonata in the background, as you're unsure what the gun could be for aside from shooting Amy, something you may not want to do. If you're looking for endings, or if you don't want to use that gun, you'll take it back to your car and get jumped by Michael one last time. You shoot, he's ground up by a car, the chapter ends. The game rewarded the player for being cautious with no certainty of a threat, reinforcing the idea that there's always something to be wary of. Now we're jumping to Chapter 2, which places John in some woods with no stated reason why. The chapter starts with exploring a cemetery and the objective of exorcising the demons that were inside of the Say family for a key. Being in a new, small, but open area in a new chapter means another chance for a Michael-like enemy to charge you. This time, that doesn't happen, but the narrow design of the cemetery, coupled with how bunched up the demon fights are, doesn't allow you to rest as you don't know what rooms will be arenas, even though that ends up being self-evident. There's one moment, however, that has one of my favorite things in horror games, the silent scare. A sudden change that doesn't audibly bring attention to itself, but can't be ignored. Before fighting the umbilical cord demon, there's a screen you pass by to open the gate blocking off the arena. A quick walk with a robed statue holding a cross on the left side, but on the way back it's moved over to the other end of the screen. You can't get a note from it and it doesn't do anything, and when you go to the other side of the screen, bloody footsteps follow you. Whether you turn around to exercise it or not, nothing happens. You're swinging at shadows but still can't rest. You don't know when that'll be a real threat, and that's what the game wants. After using the key you get from exorcising all the demons, you go up a screen and this happens. That thing uproots and runs off screen with a sound only heard here and during the deer ending of Chapter 1. It doesn't come back, and on the next screen is the worst thing imaginable. A screen full of trees. Personally, I tried to get a reaction out of every single tree, determined not to be killed by the tree demon that just ran off. But ultimately, that tree is never mentioned or hinted at again, making it this memorable one-off moment with no connection to anything, a rarity for this game. The church is next, and it does a great job of keeping the player on edge as well. The eerie music, the creepy imagery, and the notes of a group getting trapped and dying in here create a tense atmosphere as you parse what to do and deal with the spindly lady. Soon after comes the Candy Tunnel, another area with disconcerting music, and the vibe that you're in danger, as you explore graffitied rooms with notes talking about the deaths of civilians and officers. There are actually no immediate threats, but the tunnels do house one of the scariest sections in the game. Fear comes from the unknown. what we don't understand, what we don't see, and how disarmed we feel without the proper information or tools to deal with what's in front of us. So far, Faith always feels like a game that's playing with its cards close to the chest. There are some bluffs, but genuine danger has shown up enough that you feel like you have to be ready on the bluffs just in case. John dying in one hit contributes to that feeling as well. What does the candy tunnel do that ramps up that scare factor? Once John grabs this flashlight, the entire screen turns black and you can only see what's in a cone pointed in the direction John is facing, and you must survive a fight with a demon in the dark. Losing sight of it is a guarantee, and with the restricted movement, it can be hard to see everything you want, and you feel like you could unknowingly walk into the demon and die. The inclusion of illusions of the Martin twins doesn't help either as an unsettling false positive to flash up the cross. Now that vision is limited, and you've survived an encounter with a strong demon, we know that Erdorf isn't afraid to limit your vision, and he's not above throwing threats at you that can come in from multiple directions. Now every room with the flashlight is tense, since we know that the idea of being attacked is absolutely possible. If you, the player, attempt to traverse a pure black screen without the flashlight, then John will suddenly be murked by occultists, so for players who saw that, they're going to be ready to fight it off as they head that way with a flashlight. But that occultist doesn't show up now that you have a light source. In the church-like area the tunnels lead to, one room has a particularly dangerous setup where John has to exercise a painting to open the way out, but in the room are 3 cultists that run away from your flashlight, but can't be banished. This creates a tense balancing act as you have to stand still and look away from the cultists to proceed, but you have to pause that and look at the cultists to stay alive. Then navigate through them into the next room, grab the key, and traverse back through to use the key. Chapter 2 is revealed to be a dream, which is likely why it has the highest concentration of empty scares. Even then, it's a chapter with a lot of mini-bosses that are very real and can kill you, but the exploration sections themselves aren't as dangerous as the woods in Chapter 1. The perceived danger of Chapter 2 is also helped by Michael Davies, who previously set the baseline that danger can be anywhere. Chapter 2's harrowing flashlight section also builds an expectation that Chapter 3 capitalizes on, as we'll see. Chapter 3 gives us many locales to explore, starting with the clinic, a small area with a stealth section, the Lost Curtain, and teaming up with a police officer to shoot this humanoid demonoid named Jeffrey to death, all leading into a fight with the mother and her children. Then John heads off to an apartment complex to help Lisa. This location houses the Elevator Friend, a skinless, fleshy demon that acts as a less scary Michael. To activate the Elevator Friend, you have to mash the 7th floor button in the elevator. Then he'll flash up on screen and begin to attack you in the halls of the apartment until you repel him 10 times. On defeat, he drops a note about the elevator game, which you need for the true ending. But the focus of this video is the way the elevator friend stalks you. The apartments are naturally not as open as the woods in front of the Martin house, but if you want to be thorough, it takes a while to get through each floor, check for notes, and walk to the next one. You're going to be ready for the elevator friend because when he appears, he's visible on the wall, then descends to attack you. I wouldn't describe this as tense or scary, but you have to be aware, because you know that if you space out, then you're going to die. Once you enter Lisa's room, John notes a barrier is blocking him out, and there's a drawing and a note on how to dissipate it. First you go to the highest high to let go of your cross and attempt to take the elevator to the lowest low, but the elevator is forcibly stopped at the 4th floor. Leads to possibly my favorite section of the game where John picks up a camera, and the lights go out completely, leaving John on a pitch black screen. Now, when you press the action button, the camera flashes, temporarily lighting up the screen. Then you have to wait a moment before pressing it again. At this point, the music has cut off, and the only way down is to take the stairs. But even the stairs are blocked off on the 3rd floor, so John enters an apartment and finds a hidden passage in the back of one of the rooms. You'll occasionally see an instance of a red humanoid figure dashing at you that does nothing. There's a room of cultists, but if you stick to the south wall, you're fine. Then the peekaboo demon shows up. Can't move anymore, but each flash of the camera plays a second of animation as it gets closer. Once that's played out, another flash puts you back in control as the peekaboo demon slowly chases you. This is a real threat that will kill you, but looking at the shape of the 2 rooms it chases you in, well, you're probably not going to die. The first room is just going right and up, and the next room does require moving around boxes, but with the speed of the demon and the length of the flashes, it's hard to mess up so badly you die. Granted, on the first playthrough you're going to be so clenched up trying not to die, you won't be thinking about how hard or easy it is to escape. After that, you flash the camera all the way to the basement, collect your cross, purge the mask, defeat the peekaboo demon, get possessed, and head for Lisa's room. That camera section is long and stressful. There's no way to know when it will end or where you're going, as you take a back route through rooms you've never seen before. You know there are threats in the apartment because of the elevator demon, and you know that Erdorf isn't afraid to throw demons at you while you can't see because of the flashlight section in Chapter 2. Every time that camera flashes, you need to be ready to run somewhere else because there's no way you're doing this section again. It's brilliantly crafted, and for a section that long, there are only 3 screens you can die on, and it isn't likely you will, if you ask me. The game has spent its entire runtime conditioning you to be on guard and expect the worst just for the apartments and Garyland to be as effective as possible. A mix of real danger, fake danger, hallucinations, and restrictions culminates in this section where you're as stripped down as you'll ever be, and creates an atmosphere so intimidating that you might not notice that there's little to no danger to be found while you tiptoe around with the camera. And if you ask me, this section not being dangerous is a huge bonus, because the fear you feel is real, and the environmental storytelling of these rooms is an excellent addition to make the apartments feel unnatural and tied into Gary's cult, which of course it is, but letting the player read it, see it, and feel it is great. Faith the Unholy Trinity is a masterclass in horror that never uses cheap tricks like jump scares to... well, with one unfortunate exception. Garyland is the last area of Chapter 3. Towards the end, after unlocking the Moloch gate, John descends to the depths, and as he proceeds down, the darkness begins to close in, non-lethally enveloping him right before he grabs the lantern. Like the flashlight section, this limits vision, but this time to a bubble around John, meaning you can see anything as long as it's close enough to you. This is less involved than swinging around the flashlight, but the next area is designed in a more open way than Chapter 2's flashlight section. Before that, though, John has to make his way back up. This is where that awful bird jump scares you 3 times. I don't know how exactly birds got in here and why now of all times Erdorf decides to use jump scares. It's so jarring because it's so far off from how the game typically operates. The birds aren't predicated by anything and don't have sprites outside of the cutscene. It's a strange inclusion that's thankfully not bad enough to break immersion because of how great everything that comes after this is. Back to what matters here is the last area of the game, which appears to be a forest of dead trees overrun by Alphys acolytes, which are headless humans that walk backwards. The point of this section is to find 3 sacrificial acolytes and exorcise them to release the seal to Gary. This section gives the player a limited view in an open area with many randomly spawning enemies that chase the player collectively. A scary final challenge, though with the speed of the acolytes, the best way to deal with them is just to outrun them and get to the next screen and pray they don't spawn on you. On the whole, Faith the Unholy Trinity is a gift to horror game enjoyers that conditions you to fear your surroundings and expect the worst. The game provides enough real danger to make its empty threats look just as deadly as its real threats, which is done to make you doubt what's in front of you and fear what you can't see, the opposite of the title Faith. Its real dangers are horrifying, shocking, and deadly, and this extends to the story as well. Gary's actions for the unspeakable are heinous, and the world that the game inhibits is grim and morbid. Putting a story behind most of the terrors in this game shows a deeper appreciation for them, as well as making them more abhorrent. Personally, I think the illusion of danger is used well, and I love it. Even if the danger isn't there, the fear is, and that fear is an important part of the atmosphere of this game. By not knowing when to be cautious, you always will be, which can make the safest and quietest parts of the game feel like a dangerous setup. It's rare that a game of any length can keep that level of tension up for its entire runtime, but Faith delivers, and I think that's worth celebrating. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.